What's wrong, Annie?
I killed them. I killed them all.
What happens when someone commits evil and escapes consequences? No prison, no judgment, no reckoning. We often imagine that evil ends once the deed is done, but some acts don't stay in the past. They follow the soul home. Anakin Skywalker slaughtered an entire Tusken village, men, women, children, and afterwards, life continued. No prison, no trial, no consequences. He thought he got away with it. But when one crosses certain lines, something begins to rot inside of them. And when the guilt is never answered by justice, the soul deteriorates beneath the weight of what it knows.
Interesting.
Hello and welcome to HD Philosophy, the channel where we take some time with the classics to bring our lives into high definition. And this is episode 5 of Darth Vader and Street Fighter 6, the Philosophy series. And in today's video, we will examine what happens when you break bad. In Plato's Republic, there was this man of Thumos who believed justice is only that which the strong can get away with without any form of repercussion. He believed in a very Hobbesian state of nature where the strong take what they want and the weak suffer what they must. So, if you are strong enough, you should be able to take what you want, dominate others, escape consequences, and satisfy every single appetite. He even makes the case. Who would you rather be, Plato? Imagine two individuals, one who everybody thinks is a good man, but he's actually rotten to the core and he's stealing all the time. Or would you rather be a person that everybody thinks is rotten, but is virtuous? What he tries to do here, and by him I mean Glaucon, is he's trying to make an argument that what law and morality really is the weak coming together to pull down the few strong individuals they wouldn't be able to control otherwise. So we as human beings, to live freely, to really live a life of justice, means we can do whatever we want all the time. But then Plato, after listening to this diatribe, looks at him and says, do you really think a person who gets whatever they want all the time is going to live a life of virtue and justice, and is going to be, most importantly, free? Because that's the mistake Glaucon makes here. He actually equates getting whatever you want all the time to a certain form of freedom. But anybody who's watched a spoiled brat who's never been told no a day in their life knows this is not the case. Freedom isn't from getting whatever you want all the time and having more control and more domination over everyone. It's actually from your ability to moderate your desires. So that way you're making decisions from within your own agency and not being pulled by whatever outside forces malign you. So getting whatever you want all the time through power, through control, and through domination doesn't free your soul. It makes you a slave to your desires. So apply this to Anakin. The Tusken massacre matters not only because innocent people were killed, although that does matter. You see, for Anakin, giving into that rage just this one time crossed the line. Now, every time he is put in a situation that is just as dire or more dire than that, he will give in to that rage. See, that's what crossing the line does. I talk to my kids about this all the time. You never know what you're made of. So don't be so quick to create imaginary red lines in your life of, I can't handle it if this happens, or I wouldn't be able to live my life if this happens. No. Go and find out what you're made of. And every opportunity to overcome something you never thought you'd be able to overcome becomes a new line, a new strength, because you know you can handle that. But the same thing works when you give in to immorality, when you give in to that sin. That becomes the new line as well. If you couldn't handle it when something small occurred, there's no way you're going to handle it when something greater than that occurs. So for Anakin, when he crossed the line, when he lost his mother, now every single time somebody who he loves is on the line, now he can give into that rage because he did it before. That kind of violence became psychologically possible. And as he lives with it, justifiable. And then after some time, because time has all the time in the world to wait, it becomes normal. Once the line is crossed, it becomes the standard. See, your first crime changes you. That is why the first evil act is so important, because that first act reshapes the self. At first, Anakin is horrified by what he's done. He says, I killed them all. I killed them all. And you could see that pain behind his eyes and that torment. He's mourning what he's become, but then it's quickly consumed by rage. You see, for that brief moment, his conscience is still alive. But then something terrifying happens. He survives it, gets away with it, and then his soul adapts to that situation. You see, the most dangerous evil is not the evil that shocks us. It's the evil we become accustomed to. I remember reading these horrible stories about the era of famine during Joseph Stalin's reign, how people were selling human meat. And there were even stories, and God, I hope they're not true, that people actually ate their children. And instead of looking at that story like that could never happen to me, as a philosopher, I asked, what would it take for me to do that? Because that tells me something much more insightful. The desperateness of the situation. But it just goes to show what we as human beings can become accustomed to. And for Anakin Skywalker, killing becomes easier and easier. More rationalized, more efficient. And eventually, Darth Vader can destroy an entire world and remain emotionally numb. And that's because evil transformed him internally. Another one of my favorite stories of somebody getting away with Breaking Bad is Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, where the main character, Raskolnikov, has every reason to kill the pawnbroker. I mean, the writer, Dostoevsky, does such a great job of making the best case possible. This pawnbroker is evil. She's a terrible person. The village will be much better off without her. Raskolnikov has a great reason to kill her because his sister is being sold into some kind of slave marriage. And so Raskolnikov goes and on a chance occurrence kills the pawnbroker and gets away with it. Now, the entire book is a meditation on how he loses his mind. Because Raskolnikov, before the incident, believes reason can justify evil, that a superior man can transcend that guilt, and that one's conscience is actually a weakness, very Glaucon in this sense. But after the murder, something unexpected happens. He does not become free. He becomes fragmented, paranoid, alienated, psychologically shattered. It is so incredible, the metaphor, where everything he stole from the pawnbroker, he hides in his apartment in a dark corner, a metaphor for the dark recesses of his mind that this act now resides in. And what's crazy about it is that Raskolnikov cannot look at the treasures anymore. He never goes and grabs them. He never uses them. He can't even look at them anymore. And this is so absolutely powerful for anybody who has broken bad before. You know what happens. Everything surrounding the event gets tethered to that guilt. What you were wearing at the time, if heaven forbid there's a song playing, the gold, the silver, whatever it is you grabbed, all of that becomes tethered to the incident. So as you go through life and you see silver, you're reminded of it. When you hear the song, you're reminded of it. You relive it because you didn't have the healing power of justice and punishment. You got away with it. So now you're going to be psychologically tormented every single time you think about it. Because no matter how powerful you are, the majority of us cannot transcend that guilt. We cannot justify that evil. And our conscience is not weakness. It's a gift. And the fact of the matter is, it never stops. That web from that incident only grows. Because you can imagine hearing the song on the radio as you're driving. And then now driving becomes associated with the act. Because you're feeling the guilt and reliving the incident as you drive. And at some point, there is no other place to hide. And spoiler alert, in Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov turns himself in. He just can't take it anymore. You may be able to escape the law, but you can't escape yourself. And it is in quiet solitude where we are least alone. See, Dostoevsky understood something that modern culture often forgets. Evil damages the perpetrator as well. Not metaphorically, but personally and spiritually. The soul carries what the courts may never punish. Now, this is not to say that the murderer somehow can get away with their crime because of the guilt associated. That's not what I'm saying at all. I believe everybody is guilty for the decisions that they make, and justice is important, not only for the victim, but for the possibility of rehabilitation. So what is it about these acts? What is it about this sin that seems to enslave the soul? Well, St. Augustine examines this in his Confessions, because he says sin is not merely breaking the rules. Sin disorders the soul. He says, I was bound not by another's irons, but by my own iron will. And this is terrifying, because if you think about what this means, we truly never get away with anything. All of our acts are ingrained in our heart, ingrained in our character. Because Augustine realizes that repeated choices create habits. Habits reshape desires, but desires eventually enslave the will. At first, we choose evil, but eventually evil begins choosing for us. So this is Vader's tragedy. He believes power makes him free, so much like Glaucon to Plato. But every surrender to fear and domination makes him less capable of resisting them, until finally Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader, not in a single moment, but through repetition. You see, the soul hardens by that repetition, and who we are, our character, comes from all of the decisions we make throughout our lives. C.S. Lewis makes this point brilliantly in Mere Christianity. Every time you make a choice, you are turning the central part of you into something a little different than it was before. And this can be good and bad. If I'm following justice, if my soul is oriented to the light, then every choice I make, that central part of me, becomes better and better, more resolved, more free, more virtuous, more caring, more loving, etc. But there's also a double-edged sword here. Every evil decision and every surrender to that power and domination also makes you a little different than you were before. Your character is the small little decisions of who you are becoming with these choices. And eventually, the greatest horrors become ordinary, not because morality changed, but because you did. Think about Walter White from Breaking Bad and why he seems so realistic. Again, another Dostoevsky-like novel. Nobody really blames him for wanting to make enough money for his wife and his child. We would all be in that position. But the question becomes, will you break bad for it? Will you succumb to the power and the sin? What would it take for you to cross that line? What's incredible about Walter White's journey in Breaking Bad is you hardly recognize the loving father at the end of the series. He rationalizes, he adjusts, he compromises, and step by step, the unthinkable becomes natural. At first, he killed somebody because he felt like that guy was going to kill him, and at the end, he's poisoning innocent children. Just like Anakin Skywalker, in a rage-filled torrent and wrath, destroys an entire village. And then, as Darth Vader, his first act slaughters innocent children in the Jedi Temple. Because the road to tyranny is paved with justified compromises. So where Plato warns that the tyrant becomes enslaved by the appetite, Dostoevsky showed that crime fractures the soul. And where St. Augustine argues that sin becomes habit, you have C.S. Lewis that reminds us that every moral choice is shaping what we become. For Anakin Skywalker, the worst thing is that he got away with it. Justice and punishment could have remedied the soul. Now, how much justice and how much punishment, that's a topic for another time and probably well beyond my wisdom. Because how do you measure the life of innocent souls that are slaughtered? But what I do know is one of the purposes of punishment is to allow for the possibility of rehabilitation. Because you won't have it outside of punishment. Getting away with it just ensures you will never be the same. Because you see, the most terrifying thing about crossing the line is not that you may be caught. It's that eventually you may no longer recognize the person who crossed it.
M. Bison wins.
Thank you for watching HD Philosophy. Like, share, and subscribe.